Hey, what's up, Tom?
How are you?
I'm good.
It's been a while.
It's been a minute. But listen, we started passing off book ideas to each other, right? So this is like a nice little Wingman, Who You Work With Matters collab. Welcome to the new book club.
Two members so far.
I actually tried to buy the domain book club with a K, and somebody already owns it. I forget where it takes you to, but don't go to bookclub.com. We'll find a new domain to build this off of. But as we were like talking when I was on your podcast and my podcast, we're always talking about books and seeing what's going on. And I thought it'd be kind of cool to like get together and do a little bit of a book review. Like, we're getting really nerdy. Like, I need to go back to the tequila reviews also and get those back into the mix to feel a little bit more young and hip again and get into that. Now we're talking about books. But like this book I read, and then I read again. Your Next 5 Moves, Master the Art of Business Strategy, Patrick Bet-David. This is like a masterclass in itself. Like, if he did a masterclass on this, I would probably sign up for.
There was so much in that book.
So we just figured we'd come out and give a little bit of content out here, talk about this book a little bit, talk about the feelings from the book, and then dive into how we might use it for 2025, and hope somebody else gets inspired to want to join our little book club here. If you're interested in joining the book club and you want to join us for the next time we sit down and record a video and talk about the book, and we'll have tequila in the glasses next time for sure. Just DM Tom or I, and we'll put something together, because I think by the end of this, we're going to come up with what our next book is going to be and where we're going to go after it.
I've sent this to two people already.
I like the accountability, right? We started with I think it started with the Who You Work With Matters, not Who You Work With Matters, that's the podcast. Who Not How, I think was like one of the first ones, and then you sent me Driven, I think it was, and then there's been a couple back and forth, which have been pretty good. And while they're, Audible is great when you're in the car and you have extra time. If you can pick up the actual book, it's cool too, because there's so much information in here. But I even took notes, and I never have notes. Yes, the top of it says ChatGPT on it, but the prompts that I put into here are kind of wild, and I'm missing some pages. I don't know what the hell just happened here.
It looks like you got one page of notes.
My paper is blank. So
wow, you got them all into the can.
So
that's incredible.
I don't know where the rest of my fucking notes. Even better. But now I guess I don't even need the notes to talk to you about the book. But so let's unpack this book a little bit. Like, give me your favorite piece of
There were
the
a
book.
couple things. The Entrepreneur is probably something that really kind of stood out to me.
That conversation, right? The CEO conversation, right? Who's the CEO and how to determine, and I hate titles, right?
Yep.
I'm not like a title person. And it talks about being the CEO of one, and I hate people call themselves CEO.
Yeah.
That aren't actually real CEOs, right? You can call yourself a CEO, you can print it on a business card, and be the CEO of yourself. And if you're happy about that, that's great. But until you have 100 people or a group of people calling you the CEO, you don't qualify. Like, I fucking love that. I like that concept. But then it takes it into the entrepreneur versus solopreneur versus intrapreneur, which is kind of neat, right? Like, businesses like mine, where there's sales oriented, even yours, where somebody comes and learns the business of operating a marketing agency and being a good project manager, there's always like a little fear of somebody leaving and going and open up their own business, because that's what you did. That's what I did. That's what so many business owners and entrepreneurs do. They go out and do their own thing. But Pat Bet-David talks about harnessing that energy and keeping them inside as an intrapreneur, where they there's that growth mindset, and you can take that person and help grow the business to the next level with a little bit of equity, a little bit of freedom, and and that trust.
And not everybody wants yours or my job. As much as we might think that they do, they don't really all want our job.
They do, until they realize
what's involved in the job.
That it's not just shooting videos all day long.
It's not just rainbows and sunshine all day. But at the same time, I think that there are people that want to make those big impacts, want to be in the game, but they don't want all the risk.
Right.
And there's the overhead. Every time we leave our places, and again, you could talk about risk all day long, but there's always something. There's always some overhead or some risk that we have to be thinking about.
Right. Well, even just going to the bank the other week, there was a major banking issue that I had to deal with. I still had to make payroll. Everybody got paid.
Regardless of what happened to you.
Regardless of what happened to me, everybody else had to still get paid. I think that's super important, right? So stupid stuff like that you can't control. He even talks about that in the book, not controlling risk, but talks about types of crises, right? There's different types of crises. I think he labels 10 different types, whether it's personal, financial, environmental, macroeconomic, competitive issues, different types of crises that could happen in your business life cycle.
And that's going to happen, no matter who you are.
You have to be in charge of it. You have to be able to control, everything else around you, because your people still need to do their jobs and need to get compensated, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. And we talk about crisis in insurance, oftentimes usually related to weather, natural disaster, or structural. This is like, my building burned down, I'm a restaurant, now what do I do? Do you have any money saved up? Do you have another location that you can go open a new restaurant? What's your lease say? Are you allowed out of your lease? Do you have enough insurance to cover the expense of not being open to pay your personal bills, and then taking care of everything else? Do you have the people around you to help you rebuild and get things put back together again? These are a lot of the questions that nobody answers. I remember at one point,
nobody thinks of either.
What was it? Brookdale has a small business development council, SBDC, and they have a continuation planning module, or they do some stuff with continuation, which I did once upon a time, and they make you think about that stuff. Like, do you have the resources? Do you have the money? Do you have the people? Do you know what to do next? Technological crisis. The internet goes to shit. Now what do you do, Tom?
We got bigger problems. That internet goes to shit. I don't know what to say. Pack it in.
You can't build a website anymore, right? What happens if your clients' sites go down? They're relying on you to help them get back up and running. What if somebody's site gets stolen, right? Domains get stolen from people all the time.
Daily.
Like, if one of your client sites domain gets stolen, what's the contingency plan? So like that section of the book, resonated with me on things to think about, right? We want to think backwards a little bit, and then also think about the forward risk, right? The opportunity risk, which is awesome, which is more fun to talk about.
Yeah,
I think is pretty good. What did you think about now that I don't have my notes, the principles piece of it? Did you ever read Ray Dalio Principles?
I did not, but I have that on my list of things to read.
It's really freaking long. I think it was like a 40-hour audible book, or maybe 25 hours. Like, it was like a Harry Potter length book. Like, lot in there. Really, really good. But Principles by Ray Dalio, really good. But then he talks about principles, culture, and religion all tied together, right? The religion part, like Google is a religion. We're not going into religion conversation.
Yep, that's not a conversation for me.
But Google has their commandments. Even the golden rule for the Ritz-Carlton book, whatever that was, about customer service. It's built into their culture. Here are the rules to live by. The 10 commandments of each individual business. Do you have something similar set up for you?
I don't, but
but you will.
I will, and I think about it. I think about it. I just haven't put it in. And again, I think in the world that I live in, and especially when I read books like this and others, customer service is what I want my driver to be.
Okay.
Like, I want to be so good at service that people are like, these guys are just on it. They think about it. They're thinking about. I've always wanted to be where we're your wingman and we're thinking about you.
Right.
Even when you're not thinking about it.
Right.
So like when I get into these kind of books, it just keeps driving home the service aspect. And again, when I compete against AI, and when I'm faced with a question of, well, can AI do that? I want to be able to say, but we have the service to back it up. So I think that's one of our things that we're going to take into 25.
There's a book about that, Unreasonable Hospitality. It is by, the name will come to me in a little bit. I don't think he even mentions this. It's one that Patrick Bet David missed. Unreasonable Hospitality talks about service is black and white, and hospitality is color, right? So being in service, you're performing a service. Taking it to another level, the unreasonable hospitality, making it unreasonable, doing things above and beyond expectation, which gets talked about in this book, is how can you be that next level up, I think is important, and that's the service that you want to provide, and that's your differentiator of your competition, right? That's what differentiates Tom versus the other marketing agency, down the street from you, is you have the people in place, which is what I've been working on, is getting more people in place and the right people in place to make sure we can deliver on that service promise. And I think you have that in your office.
I try.
You try.
I try. But, again, I think it's part of it is, and we kind of grew up the same way, and we've talked about this on both of our podcasts. We were one-man shows that were just trying a different life than going into corporate America.
Right.
And we've both got to a point where we have 15, 20 employees each. So we didn't start like this. We started we wanted a different way to do it than the traditional way of go to college, get a job. We wanted to be entrepreneurs. We wanted to do these things. But now our jobs change. And that's what I think is key to us, is that we have to change with our jobs. Otherwise, there are guys that have businesses where they're the best salesmen.
Right.
And they also are the ones that are doing all the work. And they have people on their staff that are just not being utilized to the right way. And I think that employees don't want to just be utilized like that. They want they want to have some sort of commitment back to the company, and they want to be trusted and they want to be accountable. And it's just a matter of finding those right people to put in the right places. And again, there's going to be times where you're going to switch positions on people, and people are going to switch positions within the company, because I think that's important. But I think our job as the CEOs or the leaders or the running the steering the ship, is that it's our job to kind of see all this. And I feel like our job is we're supposed to see it a few steps ahead of everybody else.
5 steps ahead of everybody else.
We got to be thinking about, there are times when things go wrong and I'm like, oh, I knew that was going to happen. And you probably see that too in your world.
Oh, every day.
So
I was overhearing a conversation before. I'm like, I'm not getting involved. I'm like, you guys figure out what the best way to handle
solution
this
is.
And that's you said the word before about a minute ago. You used the word trust.
Yeah.
Right. And then in the book, there's a whole section about trust also, which I thought was pretty cool, that there's 4 different levels of trust that he goes into, right? One is just knowing somebody, then it's having an acquaintance, and then being able to rely on somebody, then treating somebody as family. Like there's 4 different levels, right? Endorsed was the second level. It's I heard about you. There's a connection already, that there's a level of trust there, but then it's now I use you, and now I trust you even further, and then now, it takes it to the 4th level. So that was a pretty cool conversation.
And then he also talks about how he stops micromanaging after that too.
Right, which is very important, which is very difficult at the same time, and that's why I stepped away from that conversation. I was over here, and I'm like, you guys make the right decision. You guys got that.
Think about it.
All right, so now we were talking about service. Why did you choose to bring me this awesome holiday gift from Susie's Sweet Shop? Why did we choose
Sweet Shop has got great chocolate. They've been I've known them for 10 years plus. They never disappoint. We get holiday gifts.
I'm hoping this is like the milk chocolate caramel. I'm going in.
Try it.
I chose correctly. That's just sad that I know what a box of chocolates has in it.
It's like a box of chocolates, as Forrest Gump says.
This shape is consistent with milk chocolate and caramel.
Yep.
And it's really good. So
I figured bring you something.
Thanks, Susie, for the sponsorship of
our first book review.
Of our first book review. That's so good. Now I can't talk.
So, and I also like how he talked about different, the Brady Belichick, how he pushed, Belichick was a hard guy to work for, essentially. And he pushed and he wanted excellence every day. But it also leveled up some of the players in the process.
See, I have a hard time with that. I have a hard time with that because I'm afraid of being a coach like that. And maybe that's just not my DNA, right? It's an interesting story to think about, coaching somebody really hard, and then that's going to rub off on the next person down the line. It's going to make the whole team get better. right? It's tough to like, that's got to be something really learned, that takes a whole heck of a lot of time. Don't just go out there and be an asshole to one person and think it's gonna.
No, that's not gonna work.
I think it's gonna work
That's gonna backfire. But I try to hold myself to a higher standard than I hold my team to. I don't know how you feel on that one. Like I try to be more disciplined and more on top of it and more accountable. And as we've grown, and as he talks about, like, as you grow, you have to become more organized. Like, because again, when it was just me back 15 years ago, as long as I got the few projects done, we were good. But now you got the payroll, you got the insurances, you got the health benefits, you got to make sure that you have constant flow in, and again, you have to make sure the business model works.
Right. So if you knew then what you know now, how different would your business be today?
I'd probably still be at the Fortune 500 company that I was working at, getting my paycheck every 2 weeks. No, I would still be doing this, but I would do it different. I think I would do it a little bit differently. Like I was
You'd be more organized.
I'd be more organized from day one. I didn't take on certain projects right away because I was like, oh, we don't do that. And now, like, most people want a company that can do everything for them. They don't want to call 4 or 5 guys. Oh, he only does the website. Oh, he only hosts. Oh, he only does social. They want a team. They want one team that's going to come in. I think too, because if when there's 4 or 5 guys, everybody points the finger. Oh, Aaron was supposed to do that. Oh, I was waiting on John for that over there, and everybody just points the finger, and the client loses. So I'd rather, again, going back to my name being Wingman, I'd rather be the guy who, even if we have to get other third parties involved, but at least be running the job, because I think that it's hard when everyone's pointing fingers. It's like when you don't hire a general contractor to do a job and you have all subs, and the sub's like, oh, I was waiting for the HVAC guy, I was waiting for the plumber, and nothing got done this week. So that's kind of why
that's what goes on in my house right now.
I think that's the hard part, and I think if I could have thought about that earlier, I probably would have started building the team earlier.
That out. But social media was different 15 years ago. Media in general was still very print heavy 15 years ago, as we were just getting into the digital space. But if you knew then what you know now, you'd have been so heavy in digital, you'd be a multi-billionaire by now too. Like, we all would have. It would have been like winning the lottery, like going back to investing at the right time and then selling right before the bubble burst in 2000, whatever it was. So many different things, right? Building websites and taking it to a whole nother level in the 90s, would have made so many changes, so many different things.
I knew a guy who built websites in the 90s. I was still in college, still having fun in the 90s. But and I remember him saying to me in 2008, 2009, I don't want to build websites anymore. The money's not there anymore. And meanwhile, like, I'm doing my websites and I'm growing a business, and I was like, this is great. But everything's relative. Everything's relative to what you were doing when and for what amount and where. But and now there's other guys that come in and say, I don't want to do this. I don't want to. But I think it also, you got to think about what the next technology is. So I think AI is right behind us, right? So, but the average electrician isn't going to know what to do with AI. But how can a company like Wingman align itself to work with that company to help them grow their business through the use of it? And again, it's changing things out. So maybe you're not putting you're not writing as much content because you're going to let AI do that. You're not going to crunch as many numbers. You're going to look at some predictive analysis, but on the back side of that, so you're going to take some labor away up on the front, but on the back is, who's going to analyze that data? Who's going to put that data together? Because that's what's going to be the presentation and the findings to get
that's funny. So like I started, a GPT prompt with this, and I threw it all away because it didn't print properly and I didn't check what I printed. So,
but you did get everyone in the garbage
pail. That's my own fault. But every single one got into the garbage pail. But as I was prompting it, I knew what the answers were. I was just using GPT to help me get everything on paper faster. I had notes in my Audible, and I was tagged chapter 2, this conversation. So I prompted, pull this, and I'm like, wait a minute, that's not right. So I went back into the book, pulled the actual context, and put it back into GPT, and it said, thanks for the update, and I appreciated the correction, and I did that a couple different times through building this out. If I wasn't checking it, I would have had so much misinformation, and I wouldn't have known what half of it was. But by knowing what I was talking about and prompting GPT, looking for the end result, you're going to get the right result. But if I didn't check it, and I was going off of my notes that I don't even have in front of me, it would have been ballistic. Now, he talked about this Solve for X worksheet, which actually did print out. Did you look at this yet, by chance?
No.
So he talks about this Solve for X, which is kind of, talks about, the different needs of business problems, right? What is the urgency? Who's needed? Who do we need to buy in on it? What's the impact on the gain, the loss? It's kind of cool. I want to take this and maybe turn it into and use it once upon a time in the next near future. And really, it's in the book as well. So it talks about that Solve for X. It also talks about the personal identity audit, which is pretty cool.
I want to take that. Did you take it?
I didn't take it yet, which is in here. I don't know if it's online. It might be online too, but it's in here to print out, which would be pretty neat. But one of my favorite parts about this book is it talks a lot about different people, all the who's in his life through his going up as a Bally's fitness salesperson, into different companies and leaving, and then finally being the CEO of a very large company and being a very wealthy person in the insurance industry, selling life insurance.
One thing that was crazy is that his average employee is a 34-year-old woman, when the average life insurance company has 57-year-old men as their top producers, and he went totally different and went with for his agency.
Right. Well, that's what he talks about, is knowing your competition. How can we do it? How can we be a little bit different? Right. The white male is going after the retiring white male, going after their age bracket. How can we do it a little bit differently? I think he talks about that, winning against your competition and knowing who you're competing against. Because I'm not competing against, the Gallaghers of the world, although I could be. I'm competing more against the local agencies for local businesses. You're competing against local agencies for local businesses, both mid-size. You're not necessarily competing with, a multi-million-dollar agency that's looking for multi-million-dollar clients and only wanting to do business with Fortune 500s. They may not be, they're your competition by definition, but you're not worried about it, right?
What do you think about the amount of companies that fall out of the S&P and that he talks about, like that were the Fortune 500s?
That don't keep, it's that momentum speed conversation, I think. It's keeping the momentum, which I think, and the podcasting stuff keeps me energized. I know it does for you too, because you're doing way more video content than I could ever fathom doing. But I think that these conversations are inspiring and always invigorating and always insightful and really worthwhile.
Always great with the guests too, because the guests bring a different perspective.
Yeah. So he mentions, I was just looking this up in this book, recommended reading, the section of recommended reading. There are 52 books that Pat Beck-David references in this book.
So we're going to have a meeting once a week.
And then it says other books referenced, like The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, 101 Questions to Ask Before You Get Engaged. I mean, he's very well read, and I think that's what made this book so interesting. And I'm really going to say, anybody that's a business owner, has employees, doesn't have employees, wants to build, scale, grow themselves as a person,
great read.
I think this is a phenomenal read. It's getting into the beginning of 2025. I mean, it's a great read for the new year for anybody that wants a little bit of self-motivation and some ideas on what to do next with the business. I think it's really cool.
I think that I also like the ITR, the investment time return. And when there was one thing he brought up that was going to cost X amount of dollars, and it had a 20-year payback. But then when he overlaid his revenue projections and their growth rate, it became a 4-year payback. So all of a sudden it went from, we're never going to do this, to, why wouldn't we do this?
It's like, we're going to spend $2 million on this and we're going to get a return on this. But if we add the growth that we're going to receive from it, then we pay the software off in 4 years, and then everything else for the next 16 years is just profit on top of that. And I think it's important to look at your technology in that way, and to look at investing in your marketing and everything you're going to invest your time and money into. And that's why I hire the best people to do a lot of things for us, is because I want to focus what I want to focus on. You need to focus on what you need to focus on and get the right team around us. And we're going to have a conversation about this afternoon with some other business owners, which is going to be just as beneficial. So, Tom, there's so much more we could talk about this. I know we're up on time right now, and there's some gold in our conversation, but I really want to
This was great. I'm glad
I want to
that
get some other people reading this, and then we're going to figure out what our next book is, and our book club's going to grow. We're gonna bring some more heads into this.
There we go.
Into this video book review.
This is great. I'm glad we did this. Let me just make sure there's nothing else I want to kind of hit on. But I also one thing just on a one last thought is, like he said about, you have to study yourself.
Right.
And one thing is, there was a guy, Sean, that worked for him, and he wanted to go home and have dinner with the kids every night, and he felt if he made $150,000, that was a win for him.
Right.
So I think that people have to think about it's not just business owners, it could be entrepreneurs, it could just be employees. Think about what your purpose is to that company. What do you want to get out of the company? And again, I think if more people are honest with each other and themselves, it would be easier. Like, this guy never wanted what Patrick wanted.
Right.
And he said, I remember him saying, when Sean asked Patrick, well, and he goes, what I want is immaterial, but I want to be like the biggest and the best. But that's not what Sean wanted. And I think that people have to think about it in 2025 and beyond. Like, think about what's important to you as you, because that, and to your family, because that's what's important. Like, you have to, you have to own up to yourself at the end of the day, and you have to, answer to yourself. But like, I think that that's a key takeaway of something that should be thought about with professionals.
That's a great closing point, is to really get an idea of what you want, because what you want is not what I want, and what motivates me is different than what motivates you. And same thing with our teams, is figuring out what's going to be best for everybody. Now, that's not easy, but that's a great story to reference on that. I think that's a great closing point. So, Tom, I'm glad to have our little book club.
Absolutely.
And I look forward to doing it again.
Definitely.
I'll see
Thank
ya.
you.